Hi, friends. Host Eric here. Talking with famous people. Yes, I'm running for president, but I'm still part of talking with famous people, and we do still talk about talking with famous people kind of stuff. And Inquisitive EXTP here talked to me a second ago, asked me a question about motivation and functions. So I wanted to share with him and figured I'd make a video about it. The thoughts I had the other day about how each function correlates with a value. Now, note that not all functions are judging or legitimizing functions, but they still contain within them an inherent value. And the way I thought about it is this. NE values creativity or novelty. TI values correctness. No, I'm sorry. TI values certainty. FE values resonance or validation is a better one. Validation. SI values predictability. NI values truth or correctness. Uh, TE values efficiency. FI values authenticity, and SE values change. So what that means is if you're an extroverted intuitor, your nature is going to value novelty. If you're an extroverted sensor, your nature is going to value change. And that's where part of where ADHD comes from is simply that it's not that I can't pay attention, it's that I don't find things that aren't novel interesting enough to feel motivated to pay attention to them because I seek novelty. If you're an SE Dom, simply things being static is in and of itself counter to your values. So obviously, you tend to value a lot of change, which means things that don't change at all, things that are boring, are countervalued.
So SE DOMs, I'll go back. For SE DOMs, there is a lot of change, or there isn't?
There is. The SE DOMs and NE DOMs are the two types that are going to seem ADHD most of all. So SE DOMs, they value change because SE functionally, it is the absence of abstract consideration. It's the doing that which has already been decided or pulling the trigger on an opportunity in the moment, knowing when to say boom and make it happen. The knowing when is the NI part. The boom, make it happen is the SE part. So that's why it values change. And in fact, my ESTP debater in class yesterday, he did what he often does. I'm lecturing about something, and he'll periodically interject to cause me to shift topics. It's like he's changing the channel on me, right? I'm aware he's doing it, and sometimes I'll indulge it depending on how interesting the question he asked was. But yesterday he did it too much, and I finally had enough, and I started screaming at him.
Does he know he's doing it, or just?
Oh yeah, he knows he's doing. He knows he's doing it entirely. Anyway, it probably works on most of his teachers, but I see right through what he's doing. But I understand his pain. Sometimes when I'm lecturing, he'll get up and shadow box and stuff. I don't stop him even. I don't stop him because he's so squirmy and movie. He needs change all the time.
Okay.
So those are the values that go along with the extroverted perceiver. The thing you're describing could either then be extroverted intuition, in which case the problem is not so much that you don't get around to things, it's that you get around to the part of it that's interesting, and then you go on to the next thing, and you get around to do the parts of it that are interesting, and then you go to the next thing. So that's the problem with extroverted intuition is it doesn't correlate strongly with actually getting things done. It does correlate strongly with beginning interesting projects. And so that's one of the reasons why there's some skepticism about my presidential run as well is NE and ENTPs tend to launch things, only some of which they stick with. Now, talking with famous people is an example of something that I launched and totally stuck with. I've been doing this for years, and I've got a ton of videos done. The reason is because prior to the presidential run, talking with famous people was probably the most interesting thing I'd ever done. It was prior to that I had
How'd you come up with
it. It sort of evolved organically. I did come up with the title, and I came up with the idea of having an interview show because I had made an audio recording of me doing an interview of some of my characters interviewing other characters that I have. So it was called, it's the very first episode talking with famous people, and host Eric interviews the International Delight and Pucker Tart Lemon Squeeze. But I didn't have any actual people who would let me interview them. Now, over time, it turned out.
Was it based on MBTI?
No, not at first. I mean, at first the show didn't even have visuals. It was audio recordings of interviews that I was doing, and then I just put still photos because that's what I was most accustomed to was audio work. I had done podcasts and stuff in a previous lifetime. So it took me a while to get accustomed to just making videos. It wasn't until I made an MBTI video about about being an ENTP that I actually started getting some viewers and subscribers. And it wasn't the first MBTI video I made, but it was one of the first ones. And it even when I watch it now, I go, okay, I see why that one was so much more successful than my other videos. I kind of nailed it. It's about 20 minutes, and I go through this series of emotional changes, like changes of mood and emotion from joking to serious, blah blah blah. It's very successful video in that regard. Anyway, that's what started getting people to come around, and I was still trying to pursue interviewing single people. But what ended up happening is host Zachary was one of the early adopters who joined me in these rooms. I put up announcements saying, I've launched my GoToMeeting room now, because it used to be GoToMeeting. And I'm sitting in here, and if anybody is willing to be interviewed, you see this video, please come and I'll interview you. And I'd wait for hours sometimes and nobody would show up, you know. But I was persistent. I kept doing that, and Zachary came eventually. He was the one who suggested that I bring groups around. It sort of ended up being that I'd hold court and groups would ask questions. I tried on many occasions to make it more conversational, and ultimately, that was me failing to own my role as host Eric. Sometimes people want that, sometimes people don't. You can't make everybody happy, and a lot of times the introverts come here and they want to listen to me do NETI stuff. So that's how this happened.
What do you mean, like observe you?
Well, I mean, I think they want to hear me talk about something. That's my basic wheelhouse is talking about things in ways that the other people find either insightful, entertaining, or emotionally resonant, or all three, depending on the video. Sometimes I piss people off. Sometimes I turn people off by being arrogant or not handling FE things or presenting as too much of the gauge of all knowing. And
How do you get to MBTI?
oh yeah, MBTI. That's NE right there. That's NE getting totally off topic. So the values thing, if you're an ESTP, your value is change, certainty, and then validation. What I mean by validation is if you use FE as a validating tool, you're saying, in order to know what I should think about this thing, I'm going to gauge the reactions of a bunch of other people and just go along with that. So whether you're an ESTP or an ENTP, we both have that in the third slot, which is aspirational, which means we have it as an aspirational value that everybody else is in agreement with our own certainty. But it's aspirational because we value being certain more than we value consensus. And then in the fourth slot, if you're an ENTP like me, that means you value predictability, but you seek predictability because it's in your fourth slot. You don't value it really; you seek it as a value. And so, it's your nature. If you're an ENTP, is to be to express the value of creativity. In other words, pursue talking about new things and new ideas and tangents, whatever. You seek predictability. So I seek something to help me stay on track, like you just did, and come back to the topic. Because SI is about predictability because it references the past to make predictions about the future. It extrapolates out from the past without really considering whether that's a smart thing to do. But it also keeps track of what you're doing. So it's like, here are my ideas. If my SI doesn't keep track of them, then I can go off on a tangent and forget where I was going and the overarching point of the video and stuff like that.
Yeah, that happens to me, but I know I'm going off, but I tell myself I'll remember what I was talking about originally, and I go off, and I never return to the original point because I forgot it, because I'm off on a new one. But I tell myself I'm going to remember it as I'm going off, as I'm banging that right-hand turn. I'm like, I'll remember the route, but Yeah, unless someone tells me to go back or reminds me.
Sometimes I do remember, and sometimes I don't. And when I do, I kind of feel proud of myself when I bring it back full circle. If I remember and play it off
Full circle.
and play it off so that I knew where I was going the whole time. You know, I totally forgot where I was going in this middle part, but I pulled it out of the ether right here, and so it's smooth. I feel pretty proud of myself at that point. You know, oh, you totally pulled off that thing. It looked like you meant to do it.
Yeah, I know what you mean, man. Man, I think this is your in to get on shows and whatnot because you're at your best with MBTI. You articulate well. You know your shit. It's pretty black and white what it is. You know, it's already defined. It's a I don't know what you want to call it, a theory, a school of thought, whatever. And you know every inch of it. So you get onto whatever media you need to with that, and people want to hear about that shit, and people want to be tight. They want to know about themselves. Then you push into other things off that, but.
I mean,
I think that's
like
one of your bread and butter things, man.
I agree that it's something that is leverageable in some capacity. I also agree that I understand it very well. I've talked about it so much, and I've shaped my thinking over time. I haven't stuck with early ideas. I didn't get attached to any wrong ideas because I was always trying to make my understanding a little more right. But having said that, um, one of the challenges I'm going to have is having, getting people to take me seriously as a presidential candidate. And to do that may include
getting take you seriously if they hear you talk about MBTI.
Yeah,
they'll see your brain work.
It may include displaying that I'm an expert at something like that, psychology or something. That's a legitimate way to establish legitimacy in people's eyes. The challenge is going to be to make sure that as I'm using that to achieve legitimacy, that I successfully manage to get them to direct that legitimacy towards my candidacy and focus on that ultimately in the end of the conversation.
See, all candidates come from a background. They're business owners, they're politicians, they're brain surgeons, they're something, and then they use that projecting to their campaign to how it can, help them.
Okay, well, my background includes being a business owner, and it includes directing a very successful business in a competition debate business that wasn't mine. I was the director of that. I had a large staff underneath me, and I created the entire program architecture. I reached the pinnacle of that career, basically. And I also have this YouTube channel, which is mildly successful, but while not dramatically impressive, it is distinct from other YouTube channels in a way that I can talk additionally not only about the channel where I put up videos, but about the forum that facilitates communication between the community members and the Raw channel and stuff, which makes it seem like more of an innovative idea and can help give me legitimacy in that area. I also think my 20-year-old daughter is an asset I need to utilize because that affords me a lot of legitimacy too. People see my daughter is happy, beautiful, healthy, well-adjusted, in college, she's got a job. Well, she's a good kid, as they say. She's 20, she's not a kid, but people do afford legitimacy based on what they think about your kid. I've noted that for a long time before I was ever running for president. I appreciated the way that going places with Delilah, whether she was little or older or whatever,
caused people to treat me differently. Over another human life. If you're president, you have responsibility over millions of human lives, so it's correlated.
Yeah. Okay, so if you're an ESTP, one of the ways you can decide whether you're ES or EN is on this values thing. The main difference is, what are you seeking, truth, or are you seeking predictability? In other words, should knowledge resolve things in an unconditionally certain way, or should knowledge give you more probability, more correctness about the probability of things happening?
When you do like both, when you usually do both.
Well, I mean, the thing is, we all have SI and NI, but the reason they're distinct manners of attention is because SI is basically looking at what you personally experienced and trying to find patterns from that and going, well, look, last time I talked to that guy, he said something mean to me. And then this time I talked to him, he said something mean to me. Therefore, I'm not going to talk to him anymore because he always says mean things to me. Now, you don't really have enough data to conclude that, and you probably should figure out why he said something mean, or if he meant it to be mean, or whatever, all that sort of thing. SI is very fallible in that regard. It doesn't assume it's correct about its interpretations of things. Now, NI
It's
would
just
say,
removing itself, so it doesn't have to deal with it, though.
well, I mean, that's
Right?
one possible way to deal. One might remove oneself, or one might attack and say, you always say mean things to me. But regardless, one will react as though the extrapolated probability is going to happen, but also acknowledge and know if it's lower in the stack, like it is with me, know for sure that I shouldn't trust this. Now, NI will instead of remembering you said something mean to me once before, you said something mean to me the time before that, you always say mean things. NI will note some quality of the person, conclude they're a mean person, and if you ask them why, they won't say because he said this mean thing to me and that mean thing to me. They'll say, well, it's because I can see how he feels very insecure about women and it causes him to lash out about this or something like that. That's an
I
NI
probably
answer.
have to explain it like that because that has some like evidence and facts that I can show like why I believe this. Whereas the other way, people will be like, "So you believe it because you feel some way?" And I would be like, That's not right to me." I usually try to have some type of evidence or fact to show.
Right. Well, I mean,
Unless
the
I'm
thing
just
is,
talking about like rhetorical shit.
the
I'm just interested in brainstorming. There's no answers.
the SI user will give you examples. Like he said something mean to me yesterday, and he said something mean to me the day before,
Yeah.
so he's mean. It's not like it's not substantiated. It's just substantiated in a different way. The NI user will substantiate it with observations about the objective world that they see as true and implicit to the world or the person they're dealing with, they're talking about. The SI user will link it back to their own experience and draw conclusions about how that person's likely to act in the future or how I don't like the way they make me feel or something like that. Now, it's not really a feelings thing at all, SINI. It's simply a frame of linkage. So, NI users, if you have NI in the third slot, and you've got SI in the seventh slot, those people, ENFJs and ENTJs, have a strange absence of sense of self. They don't link anything back to themselves. So they never think the things they believe are because of their experiences. They always think the things they believe are because of observations of realities that are true outside themselves, which is also why ENFJs and ENTJs typically don't believe people can change. So they're likely to say, "Oh, I don't talk to that guy because he's like this." And somebody says, "Well, he's not like that anymore." They'll go, "No, I understand he is like that."
I kind of believe like everything is possible until I personally experience it and find like, wow, it's fucking impossible. All right, now it's impossible. But so
Okay, so
I
that's
guess until I experience something, I have to go off, what I know. I can't take, I don't take other people's words for stuff ever. People would tell me like, no, trust me, don't go there. I've already tried it. I'll go try it. But
hmm. Yeah, well, that's a very SI perspective, but it's also kind of an SC perspective that you want to have a tangible interaction with something to really feel as though you.
no, I don't care about the tangible. It's just the fact that maybe they missed something. Like I want to see. I'm gonna test my intelligence against whatever the option is, whatever the problem. I'm gonna have a go at it.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't have a clear sense of which type you are.
Like if you're fishing and your friends just fished a spot, I'm gonna think like, all right, well, you know what? He didn't use this trick. He didn't check under the log over there. He didn't run his jig through the weeds. Yeah, and I'm gonna go try it.
Yeah, I have a similar attitude towards fishing. I move spots a lot. I want to try all the
Yeah,
different spots, you know.
you try every possible place, you know. You never know. And if you hit the spot, screw it. If it's because I moved, I know
Well, that's one thing I always
it.
want to try too. I also want to try leaving it in the same spot for a while. So I usually have two poles going.
Yeah. And why stop there? Why not get three? You know,
Well,
you had to pull you on out there.
because I've discovered that the three poles is you
You tried it.
it's too many. It's one too many poles because
It's overwhelming.
well because the thing is it's like I want to keep both poles relatively active, but periodically you'll get some sort of problem, a little tangle or some weeds on the thing or whatever, and so then you got to pause and deal with that one. If I have three poles, I feel like I'm never catching up. If you have two poles, you feel like you're directing the poles.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're splitting it into two. It's a duality. Humans are probably meant to deal with dualities, but everything is a duality, right?
Everything is not duality, but some things
Well,
are.
there's gray areas, but everything exists. Oh, yeah, you know what?
Oh, you're
I'm
saying
just
everything's
freaking
a
impulsively
dichotomy?
spewing out some bullshit that hit me in the head that I didn't
I,
think through. I'm not equipped to debate.
I think you meant
But it's,
dichotomous. I think you meant dichotomous, not because duality refers to the relationship that Kimberly and I have. Kimberly's an ISFJ, I'm an EHP. That's called a duality relationship. But if you're saying everything's dichotomous, well, that's a very objective perspective on things. You know,
maybe that's what I meant. So I do it a lot. I'm not accurate with the words or the terms I use because I just want to get my thoughts out there. So I'll say something that's very similar and it's kind of like broad, but just to get it out there, you know. And then anybody can easily pick it apart
hey,
because I'm not.
I
I'll
would have,
miss something,
I
but
would
that's not my
normally,
intention. I just want to get it flowing.
I would normally have understood what you meant, except in this instance, duality is a specific word from socionics that means something specific. So while I got the idea of twos, you know, like splitting into two,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, and that would have been adequate to express that, except for the happenstance that it's a specific socionics word. As far as everything's dichotomous, that's an interesting um, thing to say because,
I didn't think it through enough. I just kind of threw it out there because it seemed somewhat true, and I
yeah,
figured, we'd pick it apart if it wasn't.
right. I mean, it is true that everything communicable is dichotomous. So everything that we communicate, we first have to convert into symbols that have the distinction of being, uh, you know, words that have definitional boundaries. It's this or that and not both, or it's this, that, both, and not neither.
Well, to communicate in a language, you have to agree to a common truth, like an objective truth, that the words mean what the definitions of the words mean. And, once you both agree to that, somebody can't use a word as a symbol that means something other than its definition. And if they are, they're like corrupting the system. And that happens a lot and it breaks down communication.
Well, you're right about the key thing there being provided they both agree what it is, and that's why you got to pin people down to agree on definitions, or say what are the observations and things that we both will concede to right now, because what I'm going to do later is make you say something that contradicts one of those things, and then I'll have you.
Yeah. I mean, you can get people like that, yeah.
Right.
But they can just admit and be like, oh, yeah, yeah, fucked up. And then, both move on with a new truth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people do try to shift out of stuff. I tend to try to not let them. So,
Well, I don't shift out of shit. Like, if you prove me wrong, I'm just going to take your belief and make it my own
I'm
because
not
I'm
saying
not
you
going to walk
shift
around with
out.
a wrong belief.
I'm not saying
Or
you
not
shift
wrong
out.
belief, wrong information, wrong anything.
Yeah, I don't think you shift out. I wasn't saying you do. I'm saying people in general shift out on you, is what happens. So you try to pin them down, and they'll try to, it's like people start
Oh,
an
because
argument.
well, it depends. I guess if you fuck up, say, a major mistake and you cost your company like a lot of money or something, then people may be like, oh, my consequences are just going to be like, oh, you fucked up, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So be like, hey, you're fired. So then people would shift out in that instance based on consequences.
Well, what I'm really talking about is people coming and starting arguments about some topic, right? So they come in and they may not intend to start an argument, but they make a claim that someone takes exception with and disputes. They might come in and say, uh, I don't know, we've got to do something about the poor in this country. We need to provide them free health care. And somebody else might disagree with that. And so they'll say, okay, well, why? What is the reason? How do we know? How should we decide whether or not we should do this? Should we prefer? Um, should we prefer that which takes action to solve a problem, even if it causes other problems, or should we prioritize that which does no harm or doesn't worsen the status quo, or should we prioritize the other thing? Or explain what you want to prioritize. You get to pin them down on that and say what it is we should prioritize when they conflict. That's the most important thing.
Well, the problem is that politicians really don't have our best interest in mind. It's their best interest, so they have to dance around topics. They can be out there in the media saying, "Yeah, I'm for the poor," blah blah blah, but have no real plan behind it. And then when somebody does come up with a plan, they jump on board and be on it. But meanwhile, they've been in the press 24 times saying they support the poor so that they get the poor's vote. It's all bullshit. Like, politicians are actors. I hate the whole left-right paradigm. I think it's just created to give people the appearance that somebody is fighting for them, because most people are either on the left or they're on the right. But it's just an appearance. It's just a theater that they put on to make it look like we have a choice and that they're doing something for us. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, they're united and they're doing, what's in their best interest. And that's the corruption. That's where you need the transparency to come in and, shine light on all that crap.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know exactly how much corruption there is. I assume there's some. I would also assume
just to get the human in itself, just each human individual. These guys go in, they got no money, and then they become super rich, well beyond the salaries that they're making as a senator or congressman or whatever. And those salaries exponentially grow over the years. And every time they have to go to battle on a midterm election, they have more money to put forward, and they have more friends in their pocket from all the lobbyists, so they're more powerful with their marketing campaign, because marketing campaigns are huge in elections. And it builds almost like an oligarchy.
Sure.
Until these guys are ready to retire or pass their torch, they stay in.
Okay.
It breeds corruption.
Sure, but the thing is, some people stay in because they're the best choice for their constituency. But the thing to remember is this: in my opinion,
there's definitely good people in there. I'm just saying,
in my opinion, most of the harm is done by well-intentioned people. I believe most of the harms in the world are done by people who are intending to do something good. Because
when you get down to the general citizenry level, they're just told the wrong facts, and they don't actually check on them.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that somebody who's in the Senate or in the Congress actually believes that they have the best interest of the country in mind, and that their policy ideas are good. The reason they keep doing such harm is because they don't know anything about anything.
I would rather that be the case, because you can show them the proper way and the facts, and it should be an easy reboot of their mind. Like, hey, this is the proper way, and then they start making better decisions. However, go ahead and try that, and if that works, great. If not, then we know there's like a more.
I don't think you can show that. I don't think most of the people who don't understand can be taught to understand at the level where they're qualified.
Well, they're not competent for their level of whatever job. So,
it's specifically because a lot of people use legitimization metrics that aren't going to produce good results, and they're in politics. And specifically, they use validation as a legitimization metric. If most people agree with this, it seems to be popular, then it must be right. Then it must be right. FE does that. That's what FE does. It says, I'm going to bypass.
Because it's almost a central rule that logic rules. Logic means, logic, the congruity of thought, a chronological order, like order.
But here's the
thing. I don't know how people can go against that and believe it. I don't know how their internal logic system isn't like going off. Maybe they don't have one.
Well, it's just that their attentional habit is to gauge the answer from a what you might consider like a meta study, where they gather a bunch of studies together and they study all the studies, and then if this many studies produce this result and only a couple produce the opposite, they conclude this result is much more likely. That's a meta study, and that's what FE does. It says, I'm reading everybody's response to this. The problem is, what happens a lot is FE users develop a heuristic that works for them pretty well. And they say, I can see in this conversation that that person's angry and defensive and emotionally engaged and attached to his position and stuff. So that means he's the more biased one. And I'm going to side with the other person. And this particular heuristic of basing your conclusions about what is being said on how it's being said is one of the biggest challenges that we as a species have to deal with. Because
so now it doesn't matter what you're saying; it's how you're saying it.
Well, right.
Against you.
An FE user is going to vote for me. Is going to vote for me because they like me, they believe I'm adequately humble, they believe I'm adequately caring, and they believe I'm graceful, such that I will ensure that my positions are fully validated. In other words, that I gain broad consensus about them. That's what FE people are going to vote on. So, in order to appeal to FE people,
so FE guy will have to get paid for his neighbors. Like, hey, did you hear what Strauss had to say on this issue? They're right on, man. And he's gonna be like, all right, yeah, this guy agrees. That's validation. You know, Strauss must have said something good.
In general, if the more I can be seen with a large group of people, the more I can be seen at rallies and stuff, that's going to help with FE people without me even having to do all the extra FE stuff. So it's true that I should come across in that rally as a perfect balance of confidence, humility, caring, competence, effectiveness, and safety and familiarity. And it's difficult to try to be all things to all people. It's hard, but basically you got to try to be aware that these individuals that I'm talking to are each using their own way of deciding whether I'm legitimate. And there are
the opposite of an ENTP. Like talking to one of them would bring up all the weaknesses in an ENTP, right? I mean, bouncing ideas off them would be like bouncing ideas off your enemy. They're not your enemy, but your biggest, like most, the type that would misunderstand you most.
Well, it's maybe them or maybe an FI Dom, depending. I mean, FI Doms look for authenticity. So
what is opposite of an ENTP? Is there like an exact type of EF?
Is ISFP. ISFP is the exact opposite. We share no functions and they're in reverse order. So ISFP goes FISENITE. And
so if you can sell an ISFP a card, then your message is good.
Well, what ISFPs respond to is you authentically liking them. Like I once made a joke video. At the end, it wasn't a joke video. At the end of it was about FE. I played this little sort of demo of it. I said, okay, so before I go, I just want to talk to you. You know who you are. I'm talking to you, and I want to tell you, you are my favorite.
Oh, I know what you're gonna say.
Favorite viewer. You're my very favorite viewer. Okay. I don't say it to everybody. I'm talking to you. You're my very favorite viewer. I did that. Okay. And Katie, who's an ISFP, Taylor reported later, and Katie confirmed that when she was watching it at the end, as I was doing that as earnestly as possible, that she was just smiling with great satisfaction because she felt I authentically liked her, and that's the sort of thing that ISFPs respond to.
Because they have FE in their first slot.
They have FI in the first slot. Now, if she had FE in the first slot, she wouldn't have responded to it very much because she would have assumed that I was faking it for positioning. The interesting.
So FEs are like, I don't want to call them fake FI users, but they project FI, but they don't actually feel it.
Yeah. They don't really even project FI. They project FE, which is concern for other people's FI. So, I mean, basically, FE says I'm going to use the opposite of my authentic feelings to determine how I should feel about this. I'm going to use my read on your authentic feelings, and the stronger my FE, the more likely that read is correct. The stronger the FE, the more likely my read on if I say this, that'll make you more happy with me, or if I say that, that'll make you angry. They have a good sense of how people will respond emotionally to how they say things. I better be careful and not say this in a way that's condescending, or they're going to think that I think I'm hot shit. That's an FE thought.
What if we had a room full of just all FE users? What if we just be spitting bullshit at each other?
Well, we often do have a
Like,
room of FE users. It's just most of us don't have FE above T. If you have F below T, it's
let's say
aspiration.
everybody was a primary FE dom. So like nobody really gives a shit, but everybody's pretending that they do. Like that'd be pretty funny. Is that what would happen?
I mean, I assume FE DOMs attain actual happiness when they successfully manage people's perceptions. So it's not like they're faking everything. It just means that they're attending to how shit's going to impact you emotionally, and they're assuming you're being driven by your emotional motivations. FE DOMs are also likely, therefore, to conflate uh, their position on something with their affiliation with a group. If you're an FE Dom, you're probably a Democrat. It depends on the community in which you grow up in. But if you're an FE Dom who's a Democrat, you're going to be into politics that line up with your team's thing. So it'll be like, oh well, you're not supporting this woman, and the general topic is sexual bad behavior by men. That means if you're not supporting this woman in this conversation, that means you uphold sexual misconduct against women, and you're one of the bad guys, one of the conservatives, one of those awful right wingers.
Okay. Now say the entire majority shifted their opinion on that matter. Would the FE dom remain with their original, or would they just shift with the rest of everybody else?
No, they shift, but
So do they ever have a real stance in anything?
well, sure. I mean, the thing is, all FE users have a link to FI that ties to resonance with other people's emotional experience. So an FE user will find it very painful to think about a homeless person suffering. So if they're driving around and they see a homeless person or something, and they start thinking about how their life suffers, then and how it's unfair that they're so poor, they'll feel genuinely bad about it. I mean, they'll carry around the weight of that pain. It's not an inauthentic. Yeah, sad movies will affect them. It's not inauthentic their concern for others. It's just that when most of the time they're interacting with people, that concern for others isn't expressed through helpful action like giving a homeless person a blanket. It's expressed through maintaining the existing social web, which might mean putting someone in their place if they're getting too uppity. It might mean building somebody up if they're feeling down and left out. In other words, they try to maintain constancy about the social
norms. Like, society says a good person would do this in this instance. I should do this.
Their kind of validation thing isn't so word based. It's true that there's a possibility to jump on popular ideas, but they're more likely to determine things from the group that they're with, like people present, like actual individual people, more so than ideas that are written somewhere.
Yeah, just to keep harmony in their environment.
Yeah. They just wholly value the idea that you shouldn't be the one who's being difficult. If everybody's trying to work together, you shouldn't be the one who's being difficult. You shouldn't be the one who's being different, basically. So,
Can you have an FE and an FI user like pretty close to the stack, so they want to please everybody, but then they don't give a shit, right? Because it's not authentic to themselves.
well, they're always opposite each other. So wherever your FI is, the opposite side of the stack is your FE. So for me, my FI is in the seventh slot because my FE is in the third. If you're an FE Dom, you have FI in the fifth slot because your FE is in the first slot. If you are an
I still think I'm
INTP,
ENTP, so I'd be like you, my FI being the 7.
right? Well, no matter which one you are, your FI is in the seventh. ESTP and ENTP have the same two second, third, sixth, and seventh functions. Those are the
So what's
same.
it mean to have a? Well, I know what it means, but I want your analysis better. What's it mean to have third slot FE, seventh slot FI?
I mean, I see those as a defining characteristic, really, of both EXTPs. It means that we are going to have a problem, find our successes, find our failures on the following thing. We've got something that's logically sound, that's right within our objective internal metric. In other words, that I know from my TI that this thing is inconsistent. And what we do at first is we hammer that TI is always better than FE, and we get mad when people prioritize FE. So, but then that ends up causing us to be not liked
You,
as
you
much.
basically saying logic over feelings,
Yeah,
the
but
truth over
well, we
harmony.
we get very angry when somebody's saying prioritize what's the consensus says and everyone's going along with over your correct version of things. That makes us very angry at first, and then as we get older, we realize, or as we go through those processes, we realize that people don't like us, and we also realize that ultimately we'd rather be liked than right. Now,
Yeah, the
it's
older you get, yeah,
it's hard.
definitely different than when I was younger. There's different social circles I've gone through. You just sometimes you go in like a tornado and you tear them up, and you're like, "Fuck."
Yeah,
Next one. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that next time.
yeah. Uh, the thing is, that's what makes FE aspirational. We're always trying to to make our TI validate better. And what I mean by validate better, we're saying we're trying to make our TI
Something.
be that's correct with our reference of our internally calculated objective matrix of validity. But we also but for it to really count on our impact sheet, it's got to validate with others. It's got to pass the validation test, not just the validity test. So as we
Oh,
as we get
explain
older,
explain those two again real quick. Validate.
okay, so validity says it's relatively certain, which means, like you were saying about the definitions, if we call A X and if we call B Y, then A plus B equals X plus Y.
Okay.
That's valid because even though we don't know anything about its truth, the truth of it is that it's valid. We don't know what the truth is because we don't know what the variables stand for, and it doesn't
I was
matter.
just gonna say once we find the variables, we still know the formula, the pattern,
Right.
yeah.
The thing is, we can agree that A is true for the purposes of argument, even if it's not. So truth isn't very relevant in validity. Validity, in fact, does a truth
We're saying
table.
we know the cipher, like the definitions of the cipher for the system that we're communicating in, and we all have to agree to the cipher. Because the ciphers we use to decrypt the code, right? Words are codes.
Well,
Definition.
yeah, but what I'm saying is, a TI user has inside of their head a understanding of conditionality. So we'll understand whether something's valid or not based on whether there are contradictions implicit from the statement connectives. The statement connectives are and, or, if then, and not. So if I say if A then B and A therefore B, that's valid because of the way the statement connectives mean things. But if I say if A then B and B therefore A, it's not valid because of the way the statement connectives mean things. It doesn't matter what statements you put in for those variables. If Tom goes to the store, then Mary will have cheese. And Tom goes to the store, therefore Mary will have cheese. It doesn't matter if Tom goes to the store or Mary has cheese, or if Tom's real, or there's any store actually, or cheese, or whatever, because those things, those elements, can be interchanged without affecting the validity. Now, in contrast, validation says, I want to find out which percentage of all of these people think that's valid. But FE doesn't have any way of accessing their thinking. I can't read on your mind, on your face, what you're thinking. I can only read on your face what you're feeling. So FE users have
So
to.
FE picks up physical cues.
Well, and verbal cues too. I can read on your face what you're feeling. I can hear in your voice what your emotion is. I could hear in your voice what your logical explanations are. But here's the thing without that. FE is seeking validation from a large number of sources. It can't go ask everybody to speak the words, and if it did, it would just be using TI, really, or TE seeking a bunch of examples to TI with. Instead, what FE wants to take advantage of the parts of it that you can take advantage of. It's a shortcut. It's a way of saying, here's my best guess about what you think about that based on your feelings. So if I'm reading 50 people and I'm good at FE and I read 50 expressions of disgust at a math problem, I'm going to conclude the math problem is somehow invalid or illegitimate. Now, it may be the case that the reason they're all expressing disgust is because they know that the math problem is the way to is a shortcut to teach terrorists how to make biological weapons or something. So maybe that's what they're disgusted about, the application of it, not the correctness of it. Every user won't distinguish. They'll simply say there's something wrong with that. And if they don't know specifically what's wrong with it, they just say, well, it's wrong. Okay, so the thing is, for me to successfully achieve validation, I need to achieve validity for TI users, and I need to do it in a way that causes them to react emotionally well to the validity so that FE users can process those reactions and conclude that it's valid. And I need to display all the various FE qualities that help an FE user to like me in and of themselves, in and of myself, because of reasons that are are related to a personal thing rather than an ideational thing. Then I need to get FE users like that.
Better with FE DOMs and FI DOMs because FE is in the third stack rather than the seventh.
Well, because FE is in the third, that means that we are aspirationally remembering to note validation and everybody's opinion about things. We have the FE ability to do that reading either or understand the implications of things. Even if we don't read it in the real time, somebody says, "Hey, you know what? That was pretty awkward," and you can't. We'll understand what they mean, and we'll feel like ah. So the thing is, well, because we're only doing that aspirationally, checking hopefully often enough that we don't get too fucked up before we remember the FE. We literally simply don't have any attention left to get all the way down to FI, because the order of operations goes first. An ANTP ideates, comes up with some words to some new ideas, some new links or whatever. Second, they make sure it's relatively certain. So it just has to be valid. It doesn't necessarily have to be true as long as it's valid. Then they say, okay, is that validity recognized as legitimate by everybody else? In other words, did that make people like me or did it make people not like me? That's my approximation of whether they think my idea is good or not in FE. But then the fourth thing I do is I go, okay, I seek predictability. I wish somehow I could keep track of all these creatively certain things that I use to achieve validation because that would help me to better achieve validation, it would help me to better be creative, and it would generally make me feel more grounded as a human being. After that, we
Yeah,
get
like
to the shadow functions. After that, so the reason the shadow functions is because there's only about 4 attentional manners worth of time to split up in life.
so you don't really access our shadow functions at all,
No, we do.
unless we're like distressed or something.
We do, and how and when and stuff depends on which slot it's in. So if we're in HP with NI in the fifth slot, if you have that, if you any is Dom, that means the reason we don't really consciously use NI is because we have our nature is to come up with new novel ideas, and NI, which chooses the best of those ideas, sort of is the solution to that process. It's the end of that process. It's when you get to stop doing that. So, as a consequence, we assume that takes care of itself. When I can come up with enough ideas and I get the right one, then I'll move on to another thing to think about. We don't really worry about how we're going to pick the right one, or think that it's going to be challenging to pick the right one, or even have any thoughts about what it means to pick the right one, because we ignore that in order to continually focus on new possibilities. In the sixth slot, extroverted thinking, that's countervalued because our tool function, the default way we approach every new piece of information, is TI. That means checking for relative certainty. But TE is checking for efficiency, which is never certain at all. It's always mushy. It's saying, okay, well, how can I be more efficient to get to that thing? Yeah.
So me and Mark were talking earlier today about his graphics card and his computer had like dust on it and shit, and like it was causing like an overheating problem. And uh, people were like giving him ideas and stuff, and they were probably like pretty complicated. You got to turn the computer off, a lot of legwork, like tedious crap. But if you just had a can of air, stick the nozzle right into your computer tower, and just blow some stuff, take 2 seconds. It's the quickest way. Maybe not the most efficient because you're not in there intricately looking. But I just said, I was like, you're just going to procrastinate until you get a can of air. He's like, yeah, you're right. Because that's what I would do. And that's kind of what you were getting at. Like, I'm not sure if it's the most efficient, but I know it's going to be the most least amount of time consuming, and it's going to get the job done. It's going to be effective enough that my graphics card isn't going to overheat.
Well, the thing about TE is it's about order of operation. So it runs afoul of any TI for sure. And an example of this is before I came back and got back in here, I was working on something, but my USB keyboard was broken. The part that was broken was where the cord goes into the keyboard was loose. So it was constantly like working for a little bit and not working for a little bit. So it wasn't working at all at that point. And I began working on a document in Google Docs. I said to myself, Eric, go get a new keyboard first and then come back and do this. But I didn't because I was thick in the idea. So I went into Google Docs. I used the voice to text thing, and that's slow and sloppy and annoying. And then to fix things, I started using the virtual keyboard. Now,
all these different things, when you could go get it, I do that all the time. It happened earlier. I just can't think of it.
And the thing is, I knew I was definitely going to go get the new keyboard, and I knew that I was going to do the thing regardless. So there was no gain at all from doing it right then. In fact, there was definitely a net loss. It was just that inefficiency and that time wasted right there was pointlessly wasted, because if I had said, just wait, don't even start this, go get your keyboard, and then you come back here, and then you start it, I would have had a complete, absolute net gain over the course I did take. So I did quite a bit, about like 2 full paragraphs before I said, Eric, you fucking idiot, you get up and you go to the goddamn store. What are you doing? That's countervalued TE, though. That's countervalued TE. the reason it's countervalued is because NE wants to deal with the thing that it's enthusiastic about that's new right now. TI wants to lock it down as relatively certain by putting it in words. And um, by the time we get down to TE, it's going, hey, but you're being dumb, Eric. And NETI is going, never mind that, I'm busy.
That's what people would say, like, hey, you have no common sense, man, because you have no TE. So TE is kind of relatable to common sense.
It is, in the sense that common sense is relatable to doing things in a way
because
that
I have common sense.
leads to your goal.
You know, I do stupid things, but not stupid things.
Bro, I got you. Yeah. So then now we get down to 7th slot FI in the 7th slot, and you go, okay, well, I don't even know what to talk about that, because it never works as a intentional thing that complements whatever else I'm doing.
Well, what does FI do first? So what's an FE dom first? Like a good functioning FI, and then tell us how we function.
Well, FI is, it doesn't seem like anything. It takes a while to recognize that that's a thing, okay? Because all it really is, like earlier today, Kimberly came in here and I felt a warmth towards her that was unrelated to anything she was doing or anything she had said. It was just me realizing how much I appreciated having her in my life, how much I enjoyed the fact that she came in and sat with me here. And that's called love. It doesn't do anything. It's not really of any purpose, I can tell. And it doesn't give me any useful information, really. That's because I'm polar FI. If you are somebody who uses FI a lot, you're highly aware of those feelings that are like warmth or affection or dislike or whatever else.
What do they use that for? Like to motivate them? Because I know I see emotional knee-jerk reactions in society all the time. So do they like cause themselves to have an emotion in order to motivate themselves to do shit?
No, it doesn't work like that. First of all, the people who are the most emotionally reactive are probably those who have FI low in the stack, like me in the 7th slot. I'm very emotionally reactive. It's because it's my place of least resistance.
It's got to be the particular stimuli, something that we have, you know, probably hammered down, and we have a solid truth on it. We know a lot of shit. And if something goes in defiance of that, we're like, no, fuck no. You know, we know this.
FI is the TI of emotions. This may sound crazy because I didn't get it at first either, but this is what this means. TI says, okay, here's an object, here's an object, here's an object, here's this definition, here's that definition, here's that definition. Let's add this, let's subtract that, and this is what we get. This is the thing that must definitely be so, provided everything we assumed is true. Okay, that's how TI parses shit out. FI goes, I've got I've got 3 similar emotions, each of which is slightly conflicting with the other in some way, but also slightly supportive of the other in some way, that can't be parsed out. So, well, which emotion are you feeling? Happy or sad? Both. But are you feeling excited? I'm feeling all 3. Oh, well, how do you do what? So, what do you know then about that? Well, for example, if I feel like I like you, but I also feel like I want to tell you something about you that bugs me because I want you to stop doing it, those are 2 conflicting emotional states at the same time. It's like, I want this guy to stop. This guy's currently annoying me because he's doing something annoying. This is a reference from Sauce. I was talking to him and he was spelling filler words all over his speech. Anyway, I wanted him to stop doing it. Yeah, he was spelling likes all over the place. So I wanted him to stop doing that, but I like him. I have affection or warmth for him. So what that means is I wanted to tell him, but I wanted to tell him in a way that protected his feelings. In contrast,
I do that a lot because I feel like if I know something about, this happens when I know a lot about something, and I'll get into a conversation with something. Sometimes I do this to myself. I ask people fucking questions I know the answer to just to see what they say. Maybe it might surprise me with a different answer. I don't know. But anyway, I may ask something or somehow I get into a conversation where I know that they're fucking wrong, and like I'll try to show them that they're wrong, but I can't without just like crushing them. I feel like so I just kind of like let it be. Because if it's something insignificant, it doesn't matter if they go on believing it or not. But I do it probably because of FE to keep like harmony, you know.
Right. Well, the FI thing is, it's just that most people have a lot more understanding of how they authentically feel about something without any reasons. Now, we all have these things. We all authentically have a response to something that is pre-reasoning, pre-language, and it's our animal valuing. You can imagine, we all know that mammals, for example, mother mammals, they value their babies. We know that because they'll fight you if you come and try to mess with them. So obviously, there's a valuing implicit to life, that to be alive means to have a preferred outcome and a not preferred outcome, to have value in some fashion. You're not alive if if there's no success criteria. If getting food doesn't make you feel better, or getting killed doesn't make you feel bad or something. So obviously values implicit to life. And
so FI users chase these feelings.
FI users know them. We should be very careful as TI users about dismissing the wisdom and power of FI.
I'm not dismissing. I'm just trying to understand it. What are they doing?
They understand a lot of things.
I don't think anybody's dumb in this world. I haven't called it dumb, but I fucking hate it. I think everybody is just got different strengths.
I agree. I don't like intelligence as a concept because it covers too many different things. But the thing is, FI users will understand how you're going to change over the course of a relationship. I had an FI user predict to me exactly the arc of a relationship I was in with her, right on like the first day, the whole thing. She was completely right about how it played out. I had absolutely no clue that my feelings would change over time.
Sure.
That's bad FI.
Now, their intelligence is on stuff that you can't logically really.
Right.
It's feelings.
How would I know? Which conditionality calculus do I do to know that? But yeah. So
basically, like FI intelligence is like having a big amount of shoes that you can put yourself in at any given moment. So you have like a really, especially if you're an FI user, because you can slip into them whenever and be like, so if I do this, this affects this person this way. If I do this, this affects that person this way. They're probably feeling this way. And I don't know, you have like a really large...
your version of putting on someone else's shoes is different than mine. You're like, well, I forgot what you said, but it wasn't the way I see it. Like, if I put on someone else's shoes, it's like, all right, I can see what, I would say what they're feeling, but it's probably not what they're feeling. Like, I put myself in that situation.
I mean, like, FI...
I would react to it, but I would react differently now, obviously. So.
Yeah, I mean, FI also is highly aware that people's feelings are so complex that you can never actually completely understand it. You just do your best to do it at all times.
Is FI like having an intuitive sense of feelings, whereas like extroverted intuition is like having an intuitive sense of like tangible shit?
FI is your authentic animal relationship to something in terms of values. When Neptune says it's like putting on a bunch of different kinds of shoes, first of all, he's an FI dom, so he should know. But I think what he means is he can experience emotionally that which he imagines to be the emotional experience of somebody experiencing a given thing.
So you can bring emotions on internally by thinking about shit.
Yeah, like I can read like a sad story and feel like crying. It's like I'm feeling all the things that person's feeling, and that's like not to do them an injustice. Obviously, they feel it more intensely than I do. But I can totally like
feel motivated. Like you just like start thinking about something.
That's a bad example, though. Books are a bad example because FE and FI users both have that experience of resonating with the emotions in the book.
I think you make because when you feel motivation, your brain releases like dopamine. I think I forget what the hell it is, but those two chemicals I need. So can you make yourself feel motivated? Like I've tried, and I think I feel motivated, but the chemicals just aren't kicking in.
I can feel motivated, but for some reason, probably because I'm polar SE, I also have a hard time acting on that motivation. Instead, that motivation just makes my brain move faster and my body move not at all.
You can't will authentic FI.
I can't train myself to do it by like conjuring certain thoughts. I come up with a formula of thoughts that will conjure an emotion to make me feel motivated or something.
Okay, but it's true you can put yourself in a situation where that whether mentally or otherwise, where this is going to provoke authentic emotion in me. But what I'm saying is you have to put yourself in a situation where you make the leap.
Like motivation.
You can't decide to authentically be sad now. You could decide to cry. You could decide to show you're sad. You could decide to try to think about sad things. But you can't say, okay, you know what? I decided I feel like I don't like to smoke weed.
But he can't because he has FI.
No, he can't either. No, because FI is authentic by definition. If it's not your honest feelings about shit, then it's not the FI.
But you said what he means by putting on someone else's shoes is that he can feel what they're feeling. So if they're feeling sad, he can, even though he's not feeling sad, he will feel sad because they're feeling sad, right?
Well, what I said is he put on other people's shoes in the sense that...
Does that make sense, Neptune, or am I like...
Sorry, I had a text. Can you repeat that?
Okay, so Eric was saying that you can't make yourself feel sad on demand if you're not sad because FI is all about being authentic, and that's not authentic.
That's not what I meant. That's not what I said. That's not what I said. I said he can't...
let Eric say it.
He can't choose to change how he feels about something and have that be authentic. He can probably make himself feel sad by going someplace and thinking about something that authentically makes him feel sad. What I was saying is he can't decide to change how he feels about something because he decided he wants to feel the other way or something.
Oh, okay, so let me try this then. So
it's not so much of a choice, it's just like a thing. Like once I feel a certain way about a sticky situation.
Let me throw this at you though. So you're feeling sad, okay? You're authentically feeling sad. And I'm feeling like super happy. I just got like a promotion at work or some shit. And I come hang out with you. So you can put yourself in my shoes and start feeling happy, right? I can take you out of your sadness.
Okay, I won't lie. FI tends to actually deal with darker emotions, and happiness is probably one of the shoes that we don't own.
I wouldn't say that's your fault. No, I'd say that's like society in general, just because society is more dark. In my personal opinion, society.
You will hang out with me, and you'll probably be brought down by my mood. I won't actually be brought up by your mood. It's probably the most likely scenario.
Neptune, bring me down. You just probably bore me.
Neptune, do any of these shoes not have razor blades in them? Because I've cut my foot on every fucking pair of shoes you got.
Well, the thing is also we understand that we want to learn a lot about the world and feelings and the internal world of other people. And for some reason, we feel like happiness doesn't actually teach you anything. You have to live a while to learn that you can learn a lot from happiness, and that you actually are more productive and help the world a lot better and other people by understanding happiness. But it's not something we go to naturally, I guess, as far as exploring options and understanding. We feel like it's like the last thing to understand.
I keep trying to tell myself not to talk over people. I suck at it. And I just noticed when you heard my voice, you started speeding up your talk because you were trying to spit out what you had to say before I fucked up again. So when I do, I don't do it on purpose, dude. I just fucking have impulsive thoughts.
The last 1 minute is textbook thirst loud FE. What you just did right there, and me talking over you too, textbook thirst loud FE. The thing you just did, you noted that thing, that FEQ he gave, you were correct about it after the fact, right?
Yeah.
You went through any TI stuff, and then you were like, oh shit, I just bumped into FE, and I just realized I messed up.
Yes.
Sorry.
Textbook thirst loud FE.
I think I've learned to do that because, just growing up, I did it and probably didn't correct it. And people were, were like, wow, what a dick, And so then I just try to correct it to avoid those same consequences from happening. But what I really need to do is just not do it.
Well, we'll never not do it. We will never not do that entirely because it always come after TI.
You're older than me. You're an ENTP, so I'm gonna be just like you when I'm older. So whatever doesn't change on you I'm gonna be the same way. So if you say I'm always gonna do it, probably will.
But you will get better at it. I mean, the thing is, I used to interrupt people a lot more. I still interrupt people all the time, but I used to do it a lot more. The thing is, you do get better, but it's like TI always comes first, and you know the experience of being like, but this is important. I need to get it out right now because it's so relevant and I add so much information to the thing. But I have to finish the other little parenthetical, or else they won't have the whole picture.
And people probably don't care what I have to say. They just care how I'm saying it. Man, this guy's just fucking interrupting. Like, who gives a fuck what he has to say?
It depends. It depends on where their FE is. It doesn't bother me. Yeah, I empathize. It probably doesn't bother Neptune. He ignores FE. But he's good at it.
You're an INTP?
No, he's an INFP. INFP.
My uncle's an INFP. We get along pretty good, man.
I don't know. Do INFPs like each other?
No. Well, INFP understands me. My uncle understands me. I feel like, I'll be like talking about some cool shit I connected or whatever, and they'll be like, dude, chill out, bro. Your heart's going a million miles an hour. I see you're excited, but like he'll listen to what I got to say.
Well, we kind of, I don't know. I view like, even though like EXTPs are like really equipped, well, ESTPs are equipped for the real world, but like ENTPs, they're all really logical and smart and stuff. But for some reason, we view them as like children. I don't know. I kind of view them that way, even if they're like destroying me in an argument. I still view them as children in some weird way. Even though I know that I'm like probably a little bit less like intelligent than them or something.
I think like they're like innocent like children or something.
Well, they're just not in touch with their feelings, so their feelings stay at a stunted level. So when I see it manifesting, I'm like, oh, this is going on, and they don't quite understand it yet.
I think that's where I get it from. Okay, stop throwing a tantrum. I can't stand that. It's not a tantrum. It's like it's probably because my voice will get in a higher pitch. I don't know you guys very well, so I try to have a very cognitive, try to be present in what I'm saying and how I'm saying it.
Like when we see someone flustered or self-conscious, we instantly feel bad about it. We're like, oh my gosh, they feel so bad. Let me make them feel better about it.
The thing is, Neptune, your type, INFP, is my supervisor type. So I understand entirely what you mean. Well, the supervisor type is the type that has your polar as their dominant and your dominant as their tool. So
so my polar is
FI. Well, if you're an ENTP, your polar is FI. And same with ESTP, actually. Your polar is FI no matter what.
What's your eighth? If your seventh is your polar, your eighth is your what?
Insecurity.
Like non-existent.
No, your insecurity.
So my insecurity is NI, so which means
your insecurity is SE.
SE, which means
follow through / pull the trigger. I have insecure SE.
So procrastination, right?
Well, that's part of it. I have insecure SE, and obviously I get a lot of stuff done. But I definitely have insecure SE nevertheless. Now, normally people with
SE be like afraid to say something.
Weak SE normally has trouble getting shit done, procrastinates a lot, doesn't pull the trigger on stuff. My 8 slot SE, my 8 slot SE is the same way, except
executive functions. If you look at executive function disorder, I think that would just be poor SE, which is ENTP. They actually have a fucking disorder for it in the DSM.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I get a lot of stuff done, right? I've obviously accomplished quite a bit in my life, objectively.
It's stuff that you're interested in, though.
Well, not just that.
What about stuff you're not interested in? You've gotten that done, too? Like stuff that you're not interested in that you just care less about, but you have had, like stuff that you have to do but you don't care about. You got that stuff done?
I have had periods of self-discipline like that, but they are not common, and they're pretty far and few between. I haven't completed stuff that I didn't like since.
Did it take a crisis where you're like, oh shit, I gotta get my fucking ass in line, and then you're good for a while until the next one?
Well, I've had jobs since I was 16. So I had to work as an English teacher at a place that I did like the work and did find it interesting and learned a lot. I had to work at a place as an English teacher where I didn't like the work.
Jobs too, man.
Where I didn't like the work, but I did like the kids. Sometimes it was a challenge, a mixed bag. I had to work as a director of a debate program that I built the architecture of and built the program up from the ground up. That was pretty interesting, but it was also um, it was a lot of pressure and a lot of work. I mean, I worked very hard, and I was under a lot of pressure to win, and I did. And so it's like I've I've done those things that require me to follow through. So since I quit drinking when I was 42, um, I kind of decided that I didn't want to do stuff I didn't want to do anymore. And so my insecure SE is not doesn't express as obviously as an INTP's 8th slot SE would. It doesn't show like I don't have any idea how to get shit done. Instead, it expresses more like an actual insecurity. I don't like having to do things. I don't like having to. Okay, now let's stop talking about it and let's do it. I don't like that. Nobody around here likes that. There's got a lot of weak SE.
Well, I feel like
okay, I need you to do this right now. You have to stop what you're doing.
I feel like the 8th slot is like a 50-50% devaluing and active valuing. So it's not quite an unconscious function, really, when you think about it. So if you're interacting with people, I'm going to be most worried about being viewed as incompetent. That's like my first and foremost thing. It also helps me because I'm a type 5. But
yours is any?
No, my insecure function is TI. So when I'm talking to people, I try really hard to package everything I'm saying to be consistent and make sense so that no one can scrutinize it, because honestly, if somebody does scrutinize it, I'm going to feel like an idiot, and my FI is going to be with it all day, and it's going to suck. I'm going to hate myself.
It's hard for you, like, if someone does criticize it, for you, like, think on the fly and be like, all right, let me see what they're saying. Is that congruent? Blah, blah, blah. All right, yeah, it makes sense. Or do you, like, need time to go alone?
Basically, we have, like, a mask on hand that we pull out of our pocket, and I'm like, here's my TI face. I'm so smart. Look at me. I'm not an idiot.
But can you think on the fly, though? Like, if I did criticize your argument.
But we can't. That's why we pre-package our feelings.
I'm just trying to understand. That's probably why you feel that way. Because if I do criticize it, you can't think on the fly to offer an argument. But for you to just admit, like, oh, wow, well, that's a good point. You know, I'll think on that. Does that make you feel bad to say that?
I have to sit and think about things for a long time for them to make sense.
But
and then I store it. And
if I just criticize something you said, though, if I criticize something you said, for you to reply to me with, well, you know, that's a good point. I'll have to think on that. Would that make you feel like an idiot or something?
No, I would actually probably take the more passive role if I think that the person is actually intellectually more capable than me. I'll be like, yeah, you're totally right. And then I'll go back and think about it and come back.
As a rule, maybe you should always say, hey, you know what?
I'll
think about that. Just no matter what, just auto-reply to that.
That's not a rule.
Your options open.
No, because first of all, Neptune's not representing INFPTI correctly to you, in my opinion. He's being a little bit humble. The thing about first of all, his TI is great. He can think on the fly. His TI is in the 8th slot, but it's actually TI. It's in the 8th slot, and it's actually quite good. The main thing to note about INFPTI is they only like to use it for fun. So if you're doing like a logic puzzle game, you'll be surprised at just how good their TI is. However, if they have to use it for something serious, if it's time to decide something with TI, they don't like to do that. So what you just said, like, oh, well, you need to simply decide things with TI more, basically, is why is their insecurity function? Because they are very good at it, and they don't like to use it if it matters.
I think mostly also because when we know something matters, there's more reason to have performance anxiety though. I think that's part of it.
Yeah, performance anxiety is a good way to put your insecurity function when SC is
kind of what it is?
So it's like people are looking at me to do this thing. Now there's pressure on. Suddenly I have stage fright. That's what it's like.
Oh, okay. So I got a thought. You value its importance. Now, I think you value the importance of TI because this is something I read, or heard. But your main functions, as it goes down the stack, require less, like, if you want to think of your body as like a machine, like it requires less draw on the energy source. So for you to use TI in your 8th slot, it's like, you got to kick on the fucking, turbo generators to run your body to use it. So it's important to you to make sure you use it for important shit. You don't waste it. Whereas for us, we're running it on, low energy so we can use it more and it doesn't draw anything. Like I feel drained after doing certain things I hate.
I don't feel drained unless I feel like it's a performance. So
scrap that. I wanted to get that out there though before I forgot.
The performance anxiety thing is the key component because it's hatery and legitimate in its critiques at the same time.
He's like a real doctor.
So the hater thing is it's like I don't like SE in certain ways, but I kind of want to be like it. Like I don't like the guys who bypass the neuroticism and say, "Hey, big tits, want to fuck?" And she goes, "Okay." I don't like those guys. I think they're evil. I think SE-ery in general tends to be evil in the sense that it's reflective of what like Donald Trump said. Time for empty talk is over. Talk's not empty to me, and I don't like that to be over. And I'd much prefer that we deliberate further rather than take action from a place of lack of knowledge or something.
That's an SE way of thinking when people just say, "Hey, talk is over."
Time for empty talk is over. We need to get shit done. That's SE in a nutshell.
Okay. So I encounter that a lot, and yeah, I hate that shit too because like we haven't talked out all the possibilities, and we may encounter one of those and just get fucked. But okay, you guys want to go anyway.
The other thing that suggests to me that you probably have 8 slot SE, or you still could have first, and it manifests this way. Remember what I said about the Joe Rogan thing? You came, we talked about it, and I tried to facilitate your SE. I said, just do it right now. Get it done. And then it'll be done. You want to think about it. And, but you said, I don't want to do it right now. I've been doing shit right now, and I don't like doing shit. You think he's an ISTP? Yeah. I don't think he is an ISTP.
You have to be like in the spur of the moment. Like I have to have an energy burst.
It's more like inferior FE than 3rd slot, honestly.
I mean, it seems like polar FI, not 8th slot.
Yeah,
I'm definitely.
I mean, both of those are like both on the table to me.
I would not consider ISTP a possibility. I think he's definitely extroverted.
Really?
Yeah, I get my energy from people. That's why I've been on this channel forever. It's addicting.
And he and I are fighting over the opportunity to talk to you.
You're different.
We're both extroverts, for sure.
Wait, so extroverts try to talk to introverts? It's like a magnetic thing?
That's not what I meant, but that's a perfectly reasonable meaning to intuit from it.
Okay, so yeah, I think I'm an ENTP, man. I just don't think people understand me. And
no, it's just a thing that I go through whenever I'm getting to know someone. I look through all the possibilities. We're settling on something. So
you're
I'm not for sure that you're an ISTP. I'm saying that you seem more shy than an ESTP or an ENTP.
What screws me up, I know we're not, live stream really screws me up, but, this is sort of live too. I don't know.
This isn't being recorded. We're not being recorded right now. I don't even know why I'm in here. I normally don't have conversations when I'm not being recorded. But,
yeah, it really, really messes me up because it's like permanent stuff. It makes me nervous,
Nobody gives a fuck. Nobody's watching it. I mean, it's like there's so many hours of raw footage of people talking, and even the people themselves aren't watching it.
Chances are, no one's ever gonna fucking do it. But it's just it's always in my head. They're gonna see my face one day, someone, and be like, "Oh shit, that's so and so." What the,
Well,
just because I think I told you I work in like prison and shit. I don't know.
are you working at a prison?
Yeah, I'm a CO. It's alright.
My friend John is a CO.
Yeah, it's good benefits, man. The pay's not bad.
Wait, is that the same thing as a prison guard?
Yeah, same shit.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's what he is. Okay. I just want to check that I got CO correct because I wasn't absolutely sure. I thought it was a corrections officer, but I wasn't sure.
They run a paramilitary rank structure, lieutenants, captains, and shit. I don't really like that. I don't really like authority, especially when the people have the ranks. Like you're copying the military, but you don't embody any of the characteristics of what I would see as a leader, like in a military role or any role where you're leading people. Just simply got it bullshit. I don't know.
Well,
You like authority?
no, I am. That's a
I'm
tough
not
one.
a wing 8 though, so I don't really challenge it. I'll keep harmony. Just I got to work there, just get out. It's a means to an end, just to support my life. Like I like being home. I like being in my office.
Right.
And people say, "Oh, you're in your office or whatever." Or a lot of people say about just a lot of people in general. You spend all this time in the room, but when people are not alone, look at the shit we're doing right now. It's 4 of us in a room talking. I could be at a coffee shop doing the same thing. This is why.
Except you wouldn't be able to find people who are as capable of engaging in interesting and hopefully mutually beneficial discourse as have come around here. That there's something magic about that. I guess I have to say it's because of the way that I focus on discourse and you have to be fair and all that kind of stuff. The ENTP is an ENTP framed environment. Because of that,
the world is not framed for us, though. It sucks.
This place is framed for us, but I'd like to think also, and it's important to me that it be that way, more so now than ever, and it has to do with just general personal growth. It's important to me that this place be welcoming and include FI users.
Yeah, anybody, man. I like talking to all types.
Sure, all types, but the thing is, FI users are the ones who.
Do we have FI users?
Well, Neptune, we do. We have some. Sauce, not a ton, but the thing is, FI users.
Sauce get along pretty well, man. Is that common ENTP?
You guys have the same dominant function, so.
Yeah, I get along well with Sauce too. Everyone does. Why? Because, like Neptune, he's an FI user, and this is the thing that FI users do that we don't necessarily do. I especially don't do. You seem probably better at it than me. Is FI users care about your upsettedness even when you're wrong. Well, what I mean by that is if somebody says something really stupid and wrong, and especially if they say it in kind of a cocky fashion or something, at that point, oh, okay, well, we're playing discourse battle, and I start responding. Maybe it gets a little heated. Maybe I school the fuck out of them, and then what I want to make sure is taken away from this is that you learned something. God damn it, I'm putting you in your place. Well, FI users, yeah, but FI users don't like that, and TI users conflict with them sometimes. Well, TI users conflict with them because the TI user is focused on the fact that he's right and is concerned about the fact that the FI user appears to be critiquing him anyway. Well, of course, the FI user is not critiquing the TI user for being right. The FI user is critiquing the TI user for prioritizing the logical correctness over the authentic valuing of the wrongness that the other party had. So I think that's important for me to.
I think my FE is developed because I can sense in people where, I think I was saying this earlier, like if I get into a debate with them and I get too amped up and even if I win, they're still going to be like, oh, well, he's an asshole. Even even if I present my facts and it's all, concrete.
To give it like an extreme example, like if somebody were to like bully an FI user, for instance, and then the FI user hits them back and actually hurts them like way more, they'll, even though the bully deserved it, they'll still feel guilty about it for whatever random reason. I don't know. It's kind of like that. So like no matter what situation it is, if they hurt anyone, no matter how bad they are, they kind of end up feeling guilty about it. So like if someone's really rude and dismissive of them, I don't know. If they end up winning the argument, they still end up being like, well, I understand your point of view. At the end of it, they'll still say that. They'll still use those like weird recovery like phrases to like make sure that peace is kind of maintained or something.
Yeah, Sus does that all the time.
Hey, well, before I forget, because we're going to play off, what were you going to say that Neptune's our supervisor? Is that what we want to talk to him? Is he going to like tell us some crazy shit?
Well,
you can't really like. It's sort of just. I feel like I don't know. Eric, explain it.
Okay, so it's the best way to think about it is to compare this relationship as the equivalent of the relationship that the ENTP has with the ISTP. So imagine an ISTP as somebody.
My best friend, man.
Okay, well, ISTPs, they have polar NE. What that means is if you ask them, improvise a story right now, they will look at you, walk away. They won't sit down. They won't even say, I don't want to do that or anything. You try taking them completely by surprise. They won't respond. They'll look at you, they'll walk away, they'll walk around for a while, then they'll come back, and then they'll answer you.
Yeah, my friend, like, that happens a lot. Good for me. Well, most of them are younger. You're at drinking games or whatever, and you're playing like a card game, and the card game requires you to, on the fly, do something. They're usually deflect or pivot or laugh or just drink their drink instead of actually do something. They don't really play card games. It doesn't want to talk about real life stuff all the time, like my theories and all that shit. I feel like it entertains him because I'm like his best friend, and they make sense, but it drains him to listen to him sometimes. Sometimes I don't know if he's even listening.
Well, I mean, here's the thing: they don't know how to respond to something by generating a new idea on the fly, and they don't like environments that require them to do that, and they have a very poor sense of just generally possibility.
He responds quick on the fly when it's about real present shit. Like if we're talking about something wrong with my car, it's like quick.
Okay, well, sure, because that's not improvisation. That's quick
analysis.
Just
knowledge, right? Pulling from
it's
analysis. Knowledge base.
It's analysis, which they're good at because they got TI. They basically say, here's some facts, and we check it for consistency. So if I'm working on your car, I'm like, okay, is this engine thing here consistent with what it's supposed to be? But it's very different if you ask them to ideationally improvise. You wouldn't say, okay, let's ad lib some comedy together. If you tried to with an ISP, you wouldn't even bother. You wouldn't even get 5 seconds into it. The thing is,
do you see how I throw out examples to you? I would never say this in a normal conversation. Feel like you're fucking weird, but because you like do MBTI, I throw these examples out of like I try to clarify something in my own words, and then you elaborate more on it because I want to hear you speak more on the subject and like drill more into like what you're saying, and then I know more about it, kind of master what you said, then like, we move on to the next like thing.
Yeah, like
I already have an understanding of it, and that's why I'm giving you my impression of it. I don't even know if that's fucking relevant.
The other supervisor thing that's relevant, there is another supervisor thing that's relevant, is that their dominant function is our tool function. Your tool function and dominant function, to say that you're stronger in one of them is to misunderstand the fact that they necessarily work together all the time. It's just that your nature is what you prioritize as the absolute good, and your tool function is what you prioritize as an instrumental good. The absolute good is if something's creative and interesting enough, that's an absolute good. If the instrumental good is the using the thing. So the thing is, their dominant function is their absolute good is TI, but that's our instrumental good. So we might, it doesn't mean we're weaker at it, it just means we use it slightly differently. We still totally get it just as well as they do. Now, so their dominant nature we get just as well as they do, but they're with our tool function, but their but our dominant nature they don't get at all. So that's what makes us their supervisor. In other words, their dominant nature always a good tool. Our dominant nature, they don't get it all. So we have a big advantage over them.
No, so basically, I completely understand the first and foremost mode that you operate on, whereas you don't understand mine, but I understand yours.
How do you? Where's I need your stat?
Mine is second slot, so I understand completely how you operate, basically, as far as first slot goes. Right. And then the function that you're complete blind spotted, where you're like the weakest at, that's my dominant function. So I'm not only good at what you're best at, but I'm also good at what you're worst at.
And they're good. They're better than they think about what our tool function is. So 8 slot TI is not bad. It's just it runs afoul of the valuings of their dominant nature. They're pretty good at it, but it's just not valued, and it tends to cause conflicts with stuff.
Do you ever get hurt, Neptune? Like, you ever get hurt, like injuries?
Like physical injury?
Yeah, just like not even from fighting, just anything, like cut your freaking arm with a knife or step on a nail, anything.
That's happened before in life, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, is it a frequent thing in your life where people call you a klutz?
Oh, yeah. I bump into things all the time. At work, I've broken, like, basically every handle holder we've ever had, and I've only been there 3 months.
I was going to say, so you're an SE user, so you're...
No, I'm not an SE user. That's my weakest function.
Oh, shit. See, I keep messing it up. What's your 8 slot again?
My 8 slot is TI. So
what's your 1 slot?
My first slot is FI.
Oh yeah, that's right. Never mind. So that's completely irrelevant. Everything I just said.
But it is relevant.
I get hurt a lot though.
It's relevant because SE is how you relate to two or more objects in space. If you're an SE polar person, you're likely to trip. You're likely, like when Susie rode Kimberly's bike, and it wasn't a very good bike. It's kind of wobbly, and she complained the whole time and struggled to ride it. Then the next time it went out, Cameron rode it, and he was riding it like a perfectly normal bike, and was like, I said, don't you hate that bike? And he said, oh, it's fine. It's just a little whatever. But Susie acted like she could like the thing was barely rideable.
SE is your 8th slot.
No, that's their 7th. Both INTP and INFP both have SE in the 7th slot.
Yeah, it's like when I was younger, it was real bad. Like I wasn't even allowed to pour things until I was like kind of old because I would spill every single time.
That makes so much sense. So I can cook, all right? I know recipes.
I gotta go, guys. I'll see you later.
Good, but I'm so fucking messy with it. It's probably because I have no coordination.
You're not allowed to pour. God damn it, did I make things like that? I'm gonna go to bed.